Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the ConMet Digital Webinar. I'm Mark with Sadler Powertrain. Thank you for joining us today for this exclusive webinar on a very exciting product that we here at Sadler Powertrain believe can change the way that any size of fleet can monitor their assets and prevent trucks and trailers from catastrophic failure. Without further delay, joining me as presenters today are two of the ConMet digital marketing members, Steve Ritchie and Kevin Wu, and one of ConMet's regional sales managers, Sean Bunt. Gentlemen, thank you again for being here. And without further delay, I'd like to turn the microphone over to you and your team. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Sean Bunt. I'm your local regional sales manager to the area, so I'll be your first point of contact. Again, we appreciate you having us on board and learning about our new digital products. I think it's going to be very informative for you today. Certainly work with your local Sadler rep, or feel free to reach out to myself or any other member of ConMet, and we'll be glad to help you out. Along with the $25 credit that Sadler is issuing per account, I myself am also offering $25 to 4 lucky recipients that will be drawing names after the contest. So as long as you've provided your contact information, we will inform the winners shortly after the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to our digital team. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. Again, my name is Steve Ritchie. I'm the digital sales manager for ConMet's digital product group. With me is Kevin Wu. Kevin Wu is going to be giving you a live presentation of the portal here in just a little bit once we kind of walk through a few of the slides here. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to join us today. I know your days are very busy, and I appreciate you taking the time out. And I'd like to say thank you to Sadler Powertrain for giving us this opportunity. So without further ado, I'm going to turn my video screen off here and just start walking through our presentation.
Steve, one last thing. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box on the right, and I will monitor those as the presentation goes on. Also, we will have time at the end for Q&A. So thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Okay, well, let's get started. First of all, I want to give you just a quick background on ConMet. Some of you may not be as familiar with ConMet as others. ConMet has been around since 1964. We were a spinoff of Freightliner many years ago. You'll know us mostly by the ConMet Preset Plus hubs. The majority of your tractors and your trailers have ConMet Preset Plus hubs on them. We're also a major manufacturers of the interiors for your tractors. A lot of your dashes, your door panels, your sleeper components in your sleeper cabs are manufactured by ConMet, as well as a lot of aluminum castings on the tractors as well. We're based over here in Vancouver, Washington, where I'm located right now, and have been here for many years. So without further ado, let's start talking about the digital. There were 3 main things that we wanted to address when we developed the digital products. We listened to a lot of the fleets, and their main 3 concerns was uptime, safety, and maintenance. Uptime, we want to help improve asset utilization, improve your fuel efficiency, and also driver retention, which is obviously a very critical matter right now. Safety, we want to reduce your liability, help with your inspections on your vehicles, and hopefully reduce your insurance on your fleet. And then with maintenance, we want to improve your vehicle TCO, help with mechanic retention, hopefully help with your labor rates, and definitely improve your both tire and brake life. How are we doing that for you? By simplifying connectivity for your wheel ends and other components on your tractor and trailer. What we'll be talking today is about a group of sensors that provide data to a gateway that communicates to the digital cloud, the ConMet cloud, and we then transmit that data either to our own portal that you have access to, or through a telematic service provider, such as the PeopleNets, Trimble's, Orbcoms, things like that. We're partnering with those TSPs to provide that data to you as well. And we'll talk in more detail about that here to come. This information that we're providing to you on these sensors comes from years of engineering knowledge. As we mentioned, ConMet's been working with these hubs for over 50 years. So we have quite a bit of in-depth knowledge of the performance of the hubs, and we've done a great deal of failure analysis. So as you will see in a second, we do a lot of study. Yes, Mark? sorry. We do a lot of failure analysis at our test lab. And what we do is we run these hubs for virtually millions of miles to push them to failure so that you don't have a failure in your fleet. What this screen here shows is a test pattern that we ran on one of our hubs, and the lines that go up that spike are both temperature and vibration. So what happens with a hub when it begins to fail is you'll see spikes in both those areas. So what this screen is showing you is that pattern. And we know that that hub, for some reason or another, maybe it's just the wear on the hub itself, the seal, whatever it might be, shows that pattern prior to the failure. So what we did is we took that knowledge that we had from our test facility and brought it to the field with these sensors that I'm going to show you on your wheel ends. Right now, what these sensors do is basically give you health monitoring. What they do is they tell us there's an issue with your tire, with your brake, with your wheel. And we notify you of that. It could be low tire pressure. It could be a wheel hub that's over temperature or vibrating. The next phase is called condition monitoring. We're going to be able to tell you why that happened. So we'll be able to tell you specifically you have a bearing that is failing, or a wheel or tire that's losing a belt, something like that. And the goal is what's called predictive analytics. What we want to do down the road is tell you what will happen in the future so that when your vehicles are in for their PMs, you can address those issues long before you have any sort of warning out on the road. So we're working on that, but we're making a great deal of progress, and you'll see how we're helping you with that here in just a minute. The three areas that we're going to talk about today are the Smart Hub, the Preset Plus Smart Hub, which is wheel end monitoring, Smart Track Asset Management, which if you have currently like a GPS system on your tractors or trailers, Smart Track can provide that kind of data in addition to quite a bit more. And then Smart Air TPMS. Smart Air TPMS is your tire pressure monitoring. Similar to what you have on if you have a vehicle that has one of the smart tire pressure monitors, you've probably seen that symbol if your batteries have ever gone down on your tire, or if you've had low pressure. So we'll be talking about that as well. The first product we're talking about today is Smart Hub. Smart Hub is a sensor that is located on your hub that provides data to a gateway. That gateway then feeds the data to the ConMet cloud. We then run the data through our algorithms based on the years of knowledge that we have gathered by working with these in our test lab. And then we analyze that data, and based on those algorithms, we kind of determine, is it something that you should be notified of, or is it just sort of a one-time thing that, you hit a bump or something and we're not going to bother you with that. So that's where the value of ConMet comes in. We're using our of a issue that you're not going to even feel while you're driving down the road. These trucks obviously are so heavy with their fully loaded trailers. These vibrations are so minute, you're not going to feel it. These sensors are, and they're going to notify you of something to address. As I mentioned, one of the things the sensors do is they look at your overall hub health, bearing health, and seal health. So if your hub is starting to fail for some reason or another, it's picking up increases in temperature and vibration and notifying us of that, and then we relay that to you. But what these sensors also do is pick up brake imbalances, hard braking events, a brake seizing event, because if you're hard on those brakes, it's spiking the temperature on your wheel end, causing vibrations. We're going to pick that up. We've found a great deal of tire conditions as well through our testing with fleets. Tire flat spots, imbalances, and especially tire deflation or underinflated tires. These sensors are so sensitive, we can pick that up long before your driver or your fleet maintenance folks are even aware of it. So we can notify you of that. So it's sort of a three-element sensor that it's giving you data on. What is the value to you of this health monitoring? What are we trying to help you do? Well, we're trying to increase your unplanned downtime events. These could include roadside repairs, where you have someone that has to come and replace a tire for you along the road. Unscheduled maintenance, where you've got to bring that vehicle into your shop or another shop on the road to do more major repairs. Thermal events. Hopefully none of you have ever had to deal with a thermal event, but they can happen. That's where a wheel end could get so hot it starts a fire. Or a wheel off event, which I live up here in the Northwest, and we've had a couple of those just recently, and they can lead to quite dramatic events. So hopefully the information we're providing you will help prevent those and increase your uptime and improve your safety at the same time. When we were developing this system, we went out to the fleets and got the voice of the customer, and we asked them, what do you anticipate, or what do you think the cost of, say, a roadside repair is, and unscheduled maintenance? And again, a roadside repair is you have to have someone come and replace a tire for you. At the time we did this analysis, I mean, this is back probably a year or so ago, it was about $1,100 to have someone come out, make that change. As you can imagine now with inflation, that number is probably even greater. In fact, roadside repairs between 2019 and 2020 alone went up 30%. So you can imagine now it's probably upwards of, could be $1,500 to have that done. So as you know, you all have your own numbers. Some might be a little lower, some might be a little higher, but it's a major expense. Plus you've got driver downtime and customers that you got to get your delivery to. And then with an unscheduled maintenance, we've estimated it, talking to the fleets, of about $3,750. Again, that's probably even more than that now. This is a situation where you've had to bring that truck in to someone else's shop or your own shop, get it towed in, maybe put your driver up in a hotel, whatever, maybe the penalty to the fleet for not being able to deliver on time. So these are both the things that we're trying to help you prevent. Now what I'm going to show you is some examples. These are real world examples where our sensors have caught a situation for a fleet and we've notified them and they've addressed it. What you have here is an extreme tire wear event. So the vehicle came in for a brake service, and when it went out, if you look in the pink area up above where the lines start to spike, that's vibration on all of these sensors on the wheel end starting to vibrate. So what that is showing is there were some tires that were severely damaged and they were causing a vibration. And when they went in for the brake service, when they moved them to a new location, it caused this vibration. They weren't aware of it. We notified of them. They brought the unit back in. They brought the trailer back. They did a tire service. As you can see, the vibrations go back into the blue range, which is a normal parameter. So we were able to help that fleet with their tires and they weren't even aware of it. This is another example of where they had a tire vibration. We notified of them that the line that goes up and down there, that blue line's where they brought the vehicle in and replaced the steer tires and eliminated the vibration. The screens to the right, or the maps to the right, are before maintenance. The yellow dots are where we picked up the vibration signal. So each little yellow dot is where we picked up that vibration. So it was vibrating throughout that whole loop. And then you'll see below, after the maintenance, it is now in a normal operating range. We also can help you with dollies. A lot of the fleets we're working right now are having a lot of challenges with dolly failures or tire failures or hub failures on their dollies. And it's not something they've typically had support with in the past. So what this one shows is a dolly vibration. The blue line that goes up into the pink up there was a severely set of damaged tires causing a vibration on a dolly. Again, they weren't aware of it. We notified them, they brought it in, replaced the tires, brought it down to a normal range. Now we're going to be talking about the tire pressure monitoring system in a little bit here, but this is an example of where our hub sensors picked up vibrations caused by a slow tire leak. So as the tire was going down, it was causing a vibration. And what you'll see here, the left, that kind of golden line that's up in the pink, is the one sensor, that was the position that was vibrating. So what they did is they brought it in, they rotated it from left 3 to left 2, and all it did is reverse where the vibration was. So it's like on your car, if you had a bad vibration on your wheel and you moved it to the back, all you're doing is picking up a vibration in that other position. We notified them of that. They brought it in, took a closer look at the tires, realized they had to replace them, and they replaced the left 2 tires, and it moved the vibration back to the normal range. To the right is the map that you would be able to see on the portal of where you picked up the vibrations and the route that took and where the vibration was happening. Of course, we've talked about hub maintenance. This is an example just recently of a major fleet we're working with where they were picking up a vibration they weren't aware of. Again, you'll see the vibration pattern go up into the pink. That's the vibration of that hub because it's starting to go out, and this had many, many miles on it. They brought it in for a PM. You'll see the vibrations start to go down a little bit after they did a PM, but it then started to spike back up. That one position was spiking back into the pink again. We notified them, the fleet, of that. They brought it in for a hub service, and you'll see to the far right, after the repair, the pattern goes into the normal range. So they were very appreciative. They had no idea. And you'll see the pictures down there in the lower left. That's the bearing that was failing. And you can see there's quite a bit of damage if you can see that well enough. But it was a bearing that was going to have a complete failure eventually on the road if they didn't address it. In addition to component maintenance, we can also help you with driver management and training. What we have here is an example of, to the right is a path this vehicle took. We live up here by Mount Hood, and there's a very steep grade coming off the mountain. And what you see there is the path that truck took. And on November 5th on the left, it spiked the temperature on all the wheel sensors for that vehicle. We notified the fleet of this, and they talked to their driver. What was happening is they were riding the brakes, and they were overheating the brakes. So what we hope this tool would help you do is counsel your drivers to drive differently, downshift, use your Jake brakes, don't ride the brakes. So a lot of the fleets have been very appreciative of that knowledge and being able to train their drivers. I have a few more examples of this. This is another one where prior to the driver training, he was picking up a lot of spikes in heat on his vehicle. They did a training with the driver and brought it back to a normal range. And to the right, we showed the fleet where the pattern was, and then that before training and then after training, it goes into the green versus the yellow. So the fleet was very appreciative of that information. And this is one more, just another example of a pattern down below where we were getting a lot of spikes in heat on that path, and then afterwards to the right. In this situation, the fleet chose to replace the driver, and that's not our goal, but it does provide a training tool to work with your drivers and hopefully prevent hard driving on your fleet, because obviously that costs money in brakes and just wear and tear on your vehicles. Now we're going to talk about Smart Track. If any of your fleets, any of your vehicles have GPS monitoring on them, on the trailers or on the tractors themselves, we now have a tool that we can provide you to give you that same information plus much more, and you would be able to eliminate your current cost of GPS tracking. What this system does is it easily locates an asset, so you can establish customer alerts when assets arrive or depart specific destinations like geofencing. You can track your assets in real time. You can pull up your portal and see where your units are exactly. We've looked them up and we can zero in to like the Love's truck stop in Fresno and get a picture of it. You can upload and customize, as I mentioned, geofences. You can download utilization reports. And something that we just developed is a mileage report. And I'm going to show you that right here. What we developed, we had a fleet, a major trailer leasing fleet. And what they have to do to bill out the mileage on their fleet is to physically go out and look at the odometers and write down the mileage, put it down on a piece of paper, and then send them a bill, basically. It's a lot of manual processing to get this done. So they said, hey, would you be able to develop a mileage report for us that would show not only our units, but sub-accounts? So for every fleet that we have to bill, can you develop a report like that? And our IT folks put this together, and it's been a great tool and very well received by the fleets. What this does is it tracks the unit mileage electronically. It, as I mentioned, eliminates manual hodometers. You can choose any time frame you want, 30 days, 60 days, a week, whatever it might be. Track it in miles or kilometers. Set it up to do it automatically so that you don't have to do anything. It will just, at the end of the month, it'll send you a report and tell you how many miles all your units traveled. And as I mentioned, will allow you to have sub-accounts so that if you are billing out to other companies, you can break it out separately. This has been a great tool, very simple, and it comes with Smart Track at no additional cost. The last product we're going to talk about is Smart Air TPMS. So Smart Air TPMS is an air pressure monitoring system. As I mentioned, similar to something you might have in your car, but it gives you much more data for your fleet. Why is tire pressure so important? As you can imagine, probably one of your biggest expenses is tires. It's up there with fuel, batteries, but tires is a huge expense for many reasons. If you have a roadside event because of a tire, that's all that cost we've already talked about. And 79% of vehicles have a roadside down event due to tire inflation every year. So that's a huge number. 7% of tires are underinflated by over 20%. And there's a 1% to 2% fuel economy loss when tires are underinflated by 10% or more. And I would say the majority of fleets that we have done this work with and we've picked up data from easily have that many tires underinflated and they didn't even know it, even though they have ATI systems on them, and we'll talk about that. Safety is obviously a big concern. 85% of tire failures begin as slow leaks. So even though it doesn't seem like a big issue at first, that tire, if it's got a slow leak, is going to become a major leak and a roadside event.
Hey, Steve, we had one question pop up in the chat bar saying, will this keep track of miles per state?
That is a good question. Let me get back to you on that with our IT folks. I don't know why we couldn't, because we know the path where that vehicle has driven. So I'm sure if we can't do it yet, we could probably develop that. So we will follow up with you on that. If Sean, if you can document who that was.
Yep, I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I apologize. I'm not seeing the chat line right here. Sean's going to feed me this as it goes. But as you can imagine, safety is a critical matter for tire pressure and, of course, maintenance. We're working with major fleets right now that have to have their drivers go out and check their tire pressures in the morning and in the evening to make sure the tire pressures are in range. There's two issues with that. One, they estimate it takes 30 minutes a day in labor that they're paying for. Plus, as we all know, sometimes tire inspections some are better than others by the drivers. There's no consistency. So what this system would do is we could develop a report that gives you your tire pressure in the morning and your tire pressure at night automatically. You wouldn't have to go out and check them. And it also complements very well ATI systems. So as you can see, there's other data in there about maintenance, but we all know tire pressure maintenance is a critical factor for all of you, I imagine. What Smart Air TPMS does is it gives you actionable data to aid in the extended tire life and, as we mentioned, improve safety. It monitors underinflation, overinflation. We'll let you know if you have a slow or fast leak. We'll be able to tell you on those charts, and we'll show you the chart of how quickly you're losing air on those tires so that you'll know how quickly you need to address it. We allow you to set the thresholds for under and over tire pressure. You tell us. Every fleet's different. And sometimes they want their steer tires to be at a different pressure than their drive tires. So we set that parameter up based on your input. We also, one of these things that it does a great deal is it lets you know if you've got different tire pressure between your duals, because that can cause a great deal of drag on one tire or the other, causing premature wear on that other tire. So a lot of valuable data coming off of the Smart Air TPMS system. This is an example of one of two types of sensors that we use. This is called the cap sensor, and it basically is what the name says it is. It's a cap that goes on the end of an air valve or on a check valve on an ATI system. It's very simple to install. You basically screw it on, and then what we do is you'll see it has one of those coated screens or grids on the top of it. All we do is we put it on there. We know what position that is going on. We log that position, and then we download it to our system so that our cloud basically knows, okay, this sensor is on the left front steer tire. It's important to know that if you do make a change on tire position, that you notify us, or you make sure to keep that sensor in that same position. You take the sensor off, move the tire, and then put that sensor back in the same position. We don't know, if you don't notify us, where you've moved that sensor to. This is our latest sensor, and it's becoming much more popular than the cap. It's called the pass-through sensor. The pass-through sensor is kind of by its name what it is. It allows the air to pass through it without having to remove it from either the air valve or the ATI system. So you could either just put it on an air valve and you could air the tire up without removing it. The benefit of that is you could have a situation with the cap valve where the driver goes to put air in the tire, forgets to put the cap back on. I've done it with my own car with those little cheap plastic ones, and that's just a little cap. But this one is, you want to make sure you keep your sensors on there. So these allow you to always have them permanently in place. And as I mentioned, it works really well with an ATI system. And I'll show you right here or in a second. This is just to give you an idea of the size of the sensor. They're very light and very, very small. They're, as you can see by that measurement there, about 1/2 inch. So they work very well. They don't cause excessive vibration or out of balance situations on your wheels or tires. This is an example, as I mentioned, with the system on the ATI. So a lot of your both tractors and trailers sometimes have ATI systems on them, and we use these sensors all the time with them, and it works very well. Here's an example of both Smart Air and Smart Hub on the same fleet, and some interesting information we picked up. This is a fleet that I worked with out west. We put the sensors on up top, the tire pressure sensors, and immediately picked up one tire that was at almost 0 and another one that was at 80 pounds. They had no idea. They thought because they ran ATI, they didn't have a problem. So we notified of them. They got the tractor off the road, had it replaced. They had, with the one that was 0, definitely had a problem. They had it replaced. The other one they aired up, and as you can see after that, they went down the road just fine. They also had a hub that was overheating. That circle there shows where that brown censored hub was getting into the overheat range. We notified them of that, and they replaced that within 48 hours. They had a hub that was overheating. Another fleet, just an example where they were going along just fine, and all of a sudden they quickly started to lose tire pressure. You can see that line that drops off, and it just continues to go down. They finally addressed it, and it got back up, but they did not put enough air in it. We notified them of that, and they still needed to put some air in it when we ran this chart. They got it up to in the 80s. I think it was 81. So they had to address that still, but they addressed the tire based on our information. And again, I want to stress a lot of these things they aren't aware of. The trailer's not telling them they've got a tire pressure situation. They're not feeling it in a vibration. So luckily we're notifying them quickly so they can address it.
And Steve, you might want to mention on that chart, you can see when the asset's moving and when it's stopped.
Exactly. So thank you, Sean. To the right there, we provided a screen of where that asset was moving and where the tire pressure was and where it had the situation. So all of that visibility you will have on the portal as well. This is one of my favorite charts, and this is where a lot of times you'll talk to fleets and they'll say, well, I've got an ATI system. I don't need to worry about tire pressure. Well, let's say you have a slow tire leak and the ATI system's compensating for it. That's what this screen shows. What's happening is the vehicle would come in at night and the tire pressure would drop down to very low, like 20 pounds. And then if you look at the time, I apologize if you can't see the time, but it's around 2 in the morning when that gets so low. And then in the morning when the driver fires it up, it gets that air pressure back up to its semi-normal range, but you can see it's bouncing and dropping. He shuts it down. Those are all individual stops, those big drops. We notified them of it to the far right, and then they got the tire fixed and they were back on the road again. They weren't aware they had a leak until we notified them. They were relying on the ATI. And every time that tire is driving with that low tire pressure, you're costing yourself both fuel and tire wear. I want to stress one thing our system does also is you have a technical account manager that is assigned to you, and they are reviewing this information. A lot of systems out there are autonomous. Like there's a competitor of ours that has a TPMS system in the tractor. Yes, it will give you information on the screen when you fire it up, but if the driver doesn't do anything with it, it doesn't do you any good. We have a technical account manager that is watching this data and reviewing it with you. We have biweekly or every 2-week reviews with you, and that's what this is. This is an example of a review we did with a fleet and all the assets that have something to address. And we also will notify you immediately if you have a problem. So we don't wait 2 weeks. If you have a tire problem, we're going to notify you in minutes. But if you don't have this personal touch, you're relying on a driver to do something or an action of some kind. So that's one thing I think that kind of puts us ahead of the game, is by having this technical account manager that helps you resolve these issues. In addition to the detail that I showed you before, you would also get these screenshots that show you the pattern like we've seen in these other slides. So you're going to get the visibility, and those are the tire leaks and the assets that he had, and those are the screenshots of the data that we picked up. Finally, before I turn it over to Kevin here, this is just some screenshots of what you would see on the portal. And Kevin will walk you through this in a live format. But you're going to see a map of where your assets are, a list of your assets, a map of where they've driven, and those charts that we've been talking about throughout this presentation. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, and he's going to walk you through a live demonstration of the portal. Kevin?
Thanks, Steve. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. So I'm going to share my screen here to give you a live demonstration of how our portal looks like. So again, nice to meet all of you. My name is Kevin Wu. I'm also part of the digital solutions team here at ConMet Digital. And I'll be supporting the team on our regional team, Sean and Sadler, with any of our digital products, along with Steve. So let's get right to it. First, you'll see that I'm landing on our homepage, and you can see a quick glance snapshot of your entire fleet. Now on this map, you'll see these green, red, and yellow warning legends. And what they signify is just a quick glance health of your vehicles, right? Green, obviously meaning healthy. Yellow, you have a warning. And red, there's a critical warning on your vehicles. So we see a couple reds here. If you hover over it, you'll see some more details about that asset, like the name, timestamp, elevation, and the speed that it's currently traveling. As we scroll down, you'll see a list of your assets with their VINs, name, asset name, and the last locations and last reports. And you'll see these warning status symbols. So we have different symbols for different sensors that Steve talked about, whether it's Smart Hub or TPMS. And we'll be adding many more, like line pressure. So that gives you a quick glance and a list view of your assets. Then we have a reports section, right? So all this data is useful, but our job isn't to give you another screen to look at all day. We would much prefer you be notified for something critical, or for reporting purposes, be able to extract any data from this platform, because this is your data. This is fleet-owned data. On our reports tab, you can see that we have daily mileage reporting, TPMS reports, device health, distance traveled, geofencing reports, and various types of reports going on here. And we're always creating and adding more and more reports. So this is a quick daily mileage report I pulled on a vehicle, just one vehicle, and we can see from 12 a.m. 16th to the 17th, the starting odometer and the ending odometer, right? And the mileage that it covered that day. So you can see it was not driving for quite some time, and then did some heavy, across country, most likely traveling for 500, 400 miles. So you can extract this data and use it however you will, right? That we have leasing customers who are using this to report the number of miles an asset was used for. You can use this to test, how many over miles or under miles a leased asset may have, right? Some are purely just for asset maintenance purposes, right? At X, 1,000 miles, we want to do a service, right? Of a type, right? So these are various reporting features that we add, and you can do it by, your VIN and specific vehicles or your entire fleet. Next, we go into the geofences. Now, geofences are a way to put coordinates on a map and a fence around those coordinates, right? So just as a test here, we'll create a geofence together. So I'm going to just click Add Geofence here. And let's just do Test Kevin. And I'm going to select the shape. Circles and rectangles give a good approximate, but I like doing polygons to give you the detailed look. And let's just find a lot with some trucks somewhere, right? So we see a parking lot here. So say, it's Iowa State Capitol, so maybe it's their parking lot. Say you own the Iowa State fleet, right? And you want to know whenever a fleet enters or exits that lot, right? We'll call that the Iowa State parking lot geofence. You can save that, and whenever someone enters or exits that geofence, now you're able to pull reports based off of that geofence, right? Go back to a map view. So the purpose of a geofence, of course, you can view all the geofence activities that are happening live, and we can see, how long an asset was in that space, and that can be used for how long did a customer drop-off take, right? How long is the trailer sitting on our lot unutilized, right? Do we have too many assets, or more often than not these days, do we have not enough assets, right? Is the dwell time on average under an hour, right? And we need more assets, right? So some of these questions can be answered using a geofence. And the purpose of that geofence is, again, in a report, right? That's where it's most useful. So here I've pulled a report of a fleet of various, Cascadias, Hyundai trailers, Freightliners, all their VIN and vehicle asset data. And we can see the date that the asset reported and the time it spent in that geofence. So we have some from 100 hours, right? 121 hours. It's been sitting way too long, right? Almost a week, up till just 1 minute. Entry, exit, boom, quick and done, right? Maybe that's a drop off. So these are various ways that our customers have been using the geofence platform, the geofence tool. And before I get into an asset, I want to show you how these warning thresholds are set. So every fleet has a different preference and different types of assets. You could be in a very rough terrain doing logging, or you could be on, a super freight highway runner, right? And you may have different thresholds that you want to set your temperatures or your PSIs at. So here is how you would set those PSIs, where you would want them to be ideals, and then lower pressure warnings, critical low pressure warnings, overpressure, and critical overpressure warnings. So those are all configurable up to you, and you can add new profiles here and have different profiles for different types of assets. Now, let's go back to the homepage. So we see our quick view glance of our fleet health here. And now I'm going to click on one of these assets to get more details. So here's an asset example and a specific single asset view we're looking at here. You see the asset's name, the VIN number, last updates, gateway numbers, et cetera, et cetera. On the top right, you see the sensor information. So we do have sensors on each hub for the Smart Hub and on the TPMS for each tire, right? we can see that this vehicle is very healthy. Everything's reporting well. Last reports came in on February 17th. That's today at 12 p.m. Pacific time. So the time zones are based on what you set your profile time zones to. So for me, I'm on the West Coast. So these reports came in about 40 minutes ago. You get a quick glance of your asset. So this is a tractor. So we have a tractor diagram. And you can see that the pressures are overall within a few percentage points of each other, right? Based on TMC guidelines, that's very healthy. And the fronts, the steers are at 120. So that is on the higher end. We see a lot of fleets, on-road fleets doing 110 steer and about 100 drives. And a quick glance of that vehicle's travel history. We see that it last reported here in Texas around Sweetwater 217 at 12 o'clock. So again, 40 minutes ago. So it's been driving for the past 3 days, and you can change the views of that data based on the date and time that you wish. So just for the sake of tracking where your assets have been, so it looks like it started here in California, in San Diego, and it's making its way east. That in itself, this single feature just on the smart track alone without any of our sensors has been a huge relief for a lot of fleets. This allows you to know where your trailers are, if it was dropped off, when it last reported, right? And when we talk to large fleets, we generally see 1% to 2% of assets that the fleet manager isn't even aware of the location, right? So that's the main point, our main pain that this feature alleviates. Going down, we can see some hub temperature information. So this asset is installed with our smart hub sensor. And you can see these gray bars. That's where the vehicle is driving. So interestingly enough, you can see that the hub temperature spikes as the drive is happening, which you would expect, right? The lubricants are warming up, the brakes are being used, right? The environment's heating up. So you can see the temperature, and when it's not driving, it's around 64 Fahrenheit. At the peak of the drive on the steer, we're looking at 132. And Steve mentioned all of our engineering knowledge around the hub as a manufacturer. So you can see this threshold up here. And just from our internal manufacturing knowledge, we know when a hub exceeds 180 degrees for X number of minutes, that certain parts of the hub start to degrade, right? First, you have the lubricant overheating. Then you have the seals that start cooking and can break apart upon cool down, right? We can tell when a bearing goes bad, right? That a vibration event will occur. So similarly, this is the vibration of the hub, and we have a nominal threshold that the vehicle cannot go over, or we will report it as a warning. Here we can see that all the positions are looking pretty healthy in the nominal range. And this asset I picked is actually a show truck, so we expect it to be very clean, very healthy, so on. So the next section is our tire pressure. Here we see each position, right, and the pressures of each. So you can see a pretty clear difference. There's 2 tires on top that are much higher, and those were the steers that we saw from earlier, and the drives below, right, all bunched up together around that 100 range. So this is actually a very healthy vehicle. No major critical warnings that we see. But let's look at some problem childs, like my mom used to call me. So here we see immediately off the bat a red tire, right? We see 76 PSI on the drive left to inner, okay? So that's obviously exceeded not just the regular yellow warning, but down to the red. Now,
hey Kevin, we had a question come in. It says, when you're making multiple trips to the same destination, is it possible to tell which direction the truck is going? That one, the answer is yes. You can look on the map and physically see which direction it's going. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me go back to my last one. If you have multiple directions, the last pinpoint is always shown by this GPS drop, this teardrop. So that's where you know its last location was. And you can adjust the dates to tell, when it traveled where and the last location. If the question is asking about, a specific arrow to show its direction that it's currently heading, the reason we didn't go for that object or that image is GPS, although it's great for distances over time, it's not amazing for the exact direction at that moment. When you use your Google Maps or Apple Maps, you may realize when the satellites are triangulating your position, sometimes you're pointing forward in the vehicle, but it has you pointing sideways or backwards or left. So we didn't want to rely on satellite triangulation for direction, but overall distance, direction over distance over time. So that would
Thank you very much. Hey, before we move on, let's open it up just for a little bit for questions, just so I make sure we don't run out of time. I know we got this slated for an hour, so if anybody has any questions, now would be a time to ask. And if we don't have questions, we'll move on. But I think we've done a great job of kind of covering the breadth of the product, and there's probably some questions out there. So let's take a minute. If anybody has any questions, definitely speak up or type in the chat, whichever you prefer. Otherwise, if there's not questions, we can keep moving on. But I just I want to make sure we don't run out of time for questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Sean. I will answer the question from earlier on, can it do state tracking, mileage and estate tracking? And the answer is yes. States are essentially, in the telematics world, it's a very large geofence, right? So just like earlier, we drew a geofence around the Iowa State parking lot. We do the same around each state on our back end. Then we can tell when it entered a state and exited a state, the time, and the number of miles the asset traveled within that geofence. So that's absolutely possible. That module is kind of more of like an IFTA type of module, an over-the-road tax or off-road tax credit solution. So that's currently in our development platform. We haven't published it here today, so I couldn't share it with you. But that is a feature that is available. All the building blocks are there. We just need to publish it here on this live site. Okay. Let's go to this this warning state here that we saw, the 76 degrees or 76 psi, excuse me. And we can see that it did indeed have that warning. It was on the 16th, so yesterday evening at 8 p.m. It had that critical low pressure warning. And if you click on that warning, we can go further into detail of exactly when that happened. All the other sensor data around that time, right? So the hub temperature, the tire pressures, the speed and elevation that it was traveling at. Thankfully, it looks like this vehicle had just come to a stop when it detected that problem. And the elevation had risen, so they're in a 800 feet elevation area. And you can see the problem here, right? You see all the tires up here functioning within that 100 to 120 psi range. Then you see that flattened tire that has been traveling for some time at this lowered pressure, right? So this is when you should have received an alert, and the driver and the fleet manager both can be contacted so that they're not dragging that tire as they go. So that's a very clear, simple ROI of your tire maintenance as well as your fuel efficiency, right? If you're driving and you're dragging one of 8 drive tires, your mileage should be down significantly here. Okay. So those are the main features of the platform that we wanted to share for you. As you can see, it's a pretty agnostic and friendly platform to use. Wow, look at this guy up here. I'm just curious what their temperatures are. They're in Yellowknife. You know how they say never do a test on a live demo, right? But here, I'll do it for you guys. If we look at their asset data, I'm just curious, it's got to be cold. Let's wait for that hump temperature. And it is indeed very cold, 12 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So we see this heating up, even in that freezing cold northern Canadian winter. You can see the temperatures heating up to a healthy 100 degrees, which is normally what we see. It drops when it stops driving, all the way down to that 30s. And it looks like it woke up overnight when it was not driving, reported the temperature at 12 degrees. So that's an interesting data point just to see. And the tire pressure seemed to be unaffected. So that's all I had. Thank you guys. Appreciate your time. And we'd be happy for any feedback, comments, questions through the Sadler team, as well as through Sean.
So here's one of the questions I get asked fairly regularly, Kevin, and maybe you want to answer this. People want to know, if they're not looking at the screen, how do they get notified?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So that is one of the main concerns of fleets, right? They have portal paralysis. I have way too many things going on and not enough time. I don't have time to look at another screen. So we have notifications to a phone number, to an email address, to contacts for certain assets within your fleet, or it can be your entire fleet. And we'll notify you only when there is a critical warning or a regular warning. So you do not have to sit here and watch the data. That is not our goal. Our goal is to notify you once there is a critical issue that is going to happen soon.
So you can get either a text message or an email for your alerts.
Exactly right.
Okay.
1 second. One thing I don't know if was brought up. We do this product a la carte. So you can start with your basic GPS and you can add from there. So you could do GPS, tire pressure monitoring, hub sensing. You can do the full package, or you can piece it together, whichever aspects of it you find would best be utilized for your fleet. So that's one last thing I wanted to say. It's available a la carte or for the full package.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you very much, Sean. That's a good point. And thanks, Kevin, for that walkthrough. That was very helpful. Just to wrap up, so you've seen the existing technology that we have out there right now. We'll soon be coming out with a couple new products, smart air line pressure monitoring. So if you have a failure or a loss of pressure in your air lines, you'll be notified of that. And load sensing. So knowing how much weight you're carrying, it'll be working off the height control valves. We'll be coming out that very soon. We're also going to have a number of other sensors coming out in the near future that will monitor your hub health in looking at the actual oil in the hub, being able to tell you the condition of those elements. We're going to have DVIR connections, so the data will feed into your electronic driver maintenance logs. So we're working on that as well. So there's a whole suite of products we'll be bringing out. In addition to, we're bringing out an eHub. You may have heard of ConMet's eHub. That's a electric power generating hub that uses the drag reduction when the vehicle goes to slow down, similar to like if you watch race cars with that technology, or like a Prius, that when it's slowing down, it's generating electricity. We're developing that. We're in partnership with a number of companies right now to bring that out, and you'll be hearing more about that as well. But that kind of wraps it up for us. I appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and we really appreciate your business. And I'll turn it back over to Sean to wrap things up. Thank you again.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time today. I hope you all enjoyed the virtual webinar rather than having to travel and get together. So definitely reach out to your local Sadler rep and myself, and we'll be happy to help you any way we can. So have a great afternoon.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.